Aquaman is almost upon us, the sixth installment in the DC Extended Universe, and fans on the whole appear fairly hyped about this film. It has a great director in James Wan and has a charismatic lead with Jason Momoa playing the titular Aquaman. His performance in Justice League was pretty good, despite the character being fairly one-dimensional, being kinda the bro Aquaman, but I'm sure in his solo film we will dive much deeper into the character. The DCEU has had a fairly turbulent time trying to get itself off the ground. 5 films in, and the DCEU has managed one good film with 2016's Wonder Woman, and the last release was the highly unsuccessful Justice League, which should have been DCEU's flagship film, similar to how the Avengers truly launched the MCU and made audiences and critics take Marvel's universe seriously. So here we are, 5 years into the DCEU, approaching the 6th film, and the DCEU still lacks identity. Having a massive tonal shift after the mixed reception Batman vs Superman received, Warner Brothers has now tried to replicate Marvel, when once DCEU did everything in its power to distance itself from Marvel's storytelling and tone. After Justice League's lackluster critical and box office reception, the DCU truly feels on tender hooks now, with Aquaman being the film, strangely enough, that will probably determine the future of the DC universe, which is a really unfair weight to place on a solo film. The team-up film should be the blockbusters which shows off the characters and everything the universe has achieved, but alas, this is not the case, and James Wan has a huge task ahead of him with Aquaman. Currently, I think DC's biggest decision with Aquaman is how far do they dip their toes into the currently established DC continuity. With constant rumours of Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill leaving the DC universe, which still have not been confirmed, this means that DC will lose its 2 flagship characters. The choice could be made for Aquaman to not really reference the larger universe he is a part of, and have a solely character focused film, in similar vein to the first Iron Man, which didn't really build the large universe except for, of course, the post-credits scene. Of course, Aquaman will take part in the larger universe, which is a given. I think there will be little to no references in the actual film of the wider universe. Aquaman will be a true retest of the waters for the DCEU, and will have a big say going forward over the next 2 years if the future DC films are in the Man of Steel continuity or take place in a multiverse, similar to what we're going to see with the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film.
I've known it my whole life, but being part of something bigger like this, maybe I'm scared because I'm meant to.
So what does Aquaman need to do to restart this universe? Firstly, be creative in its storytelling. The last DC film, Justice League, was incredibly bland. The story was probably the most played out story ever in superhero films, and had maybe the weakest villain in all of the DCU films, which is saying a lot with what we've been presented with previously. Aquaman is truly in a precarious position, being maybe the last chance saloon for the established Snyder canon, and will determine whether any more projects set in this canon after Wonder Woman 84 and Shazam are released will actually be greenlit. But Aquaman, whilst being set in the same continuity as Justice League and having a similar visual look as previous DC films, Aquaman needs to try and usher in a new era for DC films, being fresh and exciting, showing DC can tell exciting and engaging stories all set within one big cinematic universe. I think people forget that Aquaman and Justice League were simultaneously in production together, and after the failings of Justice League, the Flash and Cyborg films have seemingly been pulled from scheduling for now. Aquaman may not have been given the go-ahead had it not been filmed at the same time as Justice League, a film which appears to have determined a lot of the landscape for future DC films. Basically, Aquaman probably wouldn't have got made if it wasn't already being made at the same time as Justice League, and has gone from just a solo film within the DC universe to the film that determines whether his other fellow Justice League members get their own films. Whilst public perception of Aquaman is of a weak character with feeble, rubbish abilities, and the character is at the butt of many jokes in various TV and films, Warner Brothers have obviously recognised this common public perception with the casting of Jason Momoa. Aquaman comics of the last couple of decades have tried to establish the character of Aquaman as kinda a brooding, troubled hero in similar vein to Batman. The characterization has received mixed reception, and doesn't really work for the character. There are many great stories based on Aquaman, but James Wan has already stated he wanted to leave his own imprint on the character, which I think is perfectly fine, leaving the character in a very talented director's hands. Aquaman being not the most iconic character, more creative freedom is allowed, which can really work into the filmmaker's hands, not being tied down to a particular origin as say Batman or Superman. This version of Aquaman is definitely borrowing from the New 52 though, being half human and half Atlantean, who is the rightful king of Atlantis. But I think we will see a new version of Aquaman than the character presented to audiences. Hopefully Warner Brothers have learnt hiring directors with a clear vision definitely helps the characters. The biggest evidence being Patty Jenkins' take on Wonder Woman. Allowing directors some creative freedom definitely helps superhero films and stops them from feeling tired and predictable, and gives the character an actual look which audiences can associate them with.
Yo, leave him alone. We're talking.
Aquaman definitely has a lot riding on it. A film which has probably only got made thanks to its early pre-production, and DC may have gone another route had production been delayed. Aquaman is now the film that will have a big hand on how future DC films are made. Will they carry on with the current Snyder canon, with some minor tweaks, or will this be the final nail in the coffin for the DCEU, and after next year DC begin making films set in their own separate universe? Aquaman could definitely be a fun film which will hopefully reinvent the character and the DCEU for the better. A good film's success to try and mimic will of course be Thor Ragnarok, a film which took on board audience criticism and basically reinvented everything we knew about Thor. Although of course Aquaman will be trying to reinvent the universe the film is based in instead of just simply the character. Only time will tell whether Aquaman will be a success. It faces some stiff competition next month upon release, although Aquaman is definitely the biggest film being released next month. Such films as Mary Poppins, Bumblebee, and even Oscar bait films such as Vice and The Mule could definitely provide some competition for Aquaman. But if Aquaman can stave off this competition and bring in a healthy box office pull, whilst also some positive critical reception, Aquaman could be known as the film that saved the DCEU. But this film will definitely play a massive role in the future of the DCEU, and perhaps Aquaman will become one of DC Universe's flagship characters, along with Wonder Woman. Thank you for watching.